Greetings, kindred, and a happy full moon. So we've got quite an interesting full moon, especially for us 13 star sign people. So we have a full supermoon occurring in Ophiuchus. Now there's quite a lot going on in this month of June. You know, we have a grand alignment of planets, and I posted an article about that in my FB group. So if you're a part of that, you can read it there. Or if you have the Star Walk 2 app, you can read it there under What's New. So the grand alignment actually is kind of this section here of the chart. And as we can see, you know, we've got the Goddess Palace there and the North Node. So the North Node is an invisible point. The Goddess Palace herself is an asteroid. So they don't show up in the planetary alignments in the article, but just to let you know that those two are also included. And later on in the month, the moon will join them. And obviously Chiron is, I think he's a comet. So let's get into it. So the full supermoon, or the super full moon, I should say, or we say it the other way around, begins or reaches its peak actually on the 14th of June 2022 at 12:51 in the GMT time zone, at 7:51 in the EDT time zone, and at 21:51 in the AEDT time zone. So here's the chart wheel. Let's just expand that a little bit. Okay. So as you can see, the moon's going to be at 15 degrees. Now we spoke about the number 15 at the new moon. You know, the number 15 is associated to not Capricorn, Saturn. And we know that Saturn's in retrograde at the moment. And when Saturn goes into retrograde, he's actually going over old ground to find solutions, you know, going over old ground to times when he was successful, so he can go back and get some resources to bring forward. But sometimes, you know, with Saturn retrograding, especially in his own sign, oh wow, busy road out there today, apologies. When Saturn retrogrades, sometimes he can get stuck in the past, you know, in the good times or even in the bad times, you know. So sometimes he can berate himself for mistakes that he's made in the past as well. And I feel that's pretty relevant to this full moon. Now, I've heard many people say like, oh, articles for the moon cycles basically only last 2 to 3 days. I mean, the peak of the energy of the moon itself lasts for a couple of days, but I go into all the aspects and normally cover, you know, any events that are going on within that 2 weeks of the new cycle, of the new moon or the full moon cycle. So, you know, this is relevant really for the next 2 weeks. Right, so 15 degrees, the number of Saturn, 15 is all about karma, but it's the darker side of karma. And it's where we reap what we have sown. And if there's been any abuse of power or authority, then it's kind of like bringing that energy into its full, especially in the sign of Ophiuchus. You know, traditionally, Ophiuchus is the doctor of the Zodiac, you know, the doctor, the surgeon, medicine, you know, sound frequencies, but it's like healing or medicine in its natural organic forms. And, you know, not really in chemical forms. Ophiuchus really doesn't like anything man-made or artificial. You know, it's very much in its authenticity. So, you know, if this was the sun in Ophiuchus, it'd be representing really the energy of Osiris in Egyptian mythology. But with the moon here, it's really more about the Isis Nephis mythology. So it's very feminine. It's more based on the feminine energy. So we can see that the moon is also in opposition to the black moon Lilith, who's in Gemini right now. I mean, the black moon Lilith is quite erratic in her movements in our skies. So she's flitting in between Taurus and Gemini at the moment, but she is kind of leaving or separating from Taurus now and moving into Gemini pretty strongly. So for Gemini suns out there, sun signs, or even, you know, Sagittarius, Ophiuchus, and eventually Capricorn, we will, you know, the sun will be either conjuncting your, the black moon will either be conjuncting your sun or opposing it. And, you know, when she does that, we can tend to lack energy. You know, life is full of stops and starts, you know. It's like one step forward, two steps back. We can tend to feel a little bit depressed because when she opposes or conjuncts our sun, it's like an eclipse. So, you know, the energy is very strongly felt, but we're not always aware of it. So that's just a little warning going on out there. I mean, Ophiuchus has been going through this for a little while, and Scorpio was going through it for a little while, but I think she stopped opposing Scorpio now. It's more kind of Ophiuchus, Sagittarius. So the moon in Ophiuchus, I mean, this is all about women's groups. It's all about rituals and shamanism. It's all about healing herbs and brews. You know, it's all about our inner temple of emotions and instincts. So it can also represent, you know, a realization of misunderstandings. You know, Ophiuchus himself, you know, the sun, the masculine version of Ophiuchus is, like I said, the doctor, the medicine prescriber, the surgeon. And, you know, I just feel that that's really relevant. And women's groups is really relevant right now. Now, I have some friends all over the place, and they have all been coming together to, you know, whatever they do in their groups, whether it's meditations or yoga or, you know, other forms of rituals or even chin wags. Do you know what I mean? A lot of women will find that they're amalgamating. I think that's the right word to use at the moment. So our moon will also be in square to the goddess Juno and Neptune. So again, this is why I feel the feminine is very strongly aspected at the moment. There's a lot of pressure. I mean, Juno represents the abused wife or abused children, but she's also all about marriage and commitments. But the mythology of Juno herself, I mean, she was the wife of Jupiter, but very kind of neglected by him, and, you know, had to put up with a lot of bullshit, to be honest, from her husband. But, you know, she was very much kind of sidelined and rejected, suffered a lot of rejection and abandonment issues and stuff like that. So I really feel this is relevant at the moment. And, but I don't feel that this is fully in the limelight, so to speak, because with the moon in square to Neptune, it's like we feel the energy, but we don't necessarily understand it. We can become very confused and, you know, very much blocked by psychic energy. So we're not flowing with the psychic energy when the moon and Neptune are in square. It actually creates the block and tension, and we become super sensitive to our environments. I mean, Neptune is in his own sign of Pisces, but he is due to go retrograde soon, and he's at 3 degrees. So this is a very spiritual number. You know, number 3 does represent like life, death, rebirth. It's also the number of Jupiter, and it's all about expansion as well. So with this square, we can tend to go into fantasy land. We can tend to build castles in the sky, and maybe fool ourselves about certain things. Do you know what I mean? It's kind of like an energy of avoidance. And especially if we're not familiar with the Ophiuchian energy, you know, we can tend to go into a place of avoidance, or maybe we don't want to face up to our past mistakes, or maybe we don't want to see the truth. And the reason why I say that is because the moon is in opposition to the black moon Lilith in Gemini. Now the black moon Lilith in Gemini really creates issues around authenticity, creates issues around, you know, being true to yourself. You know, sometimes we can tend to go along with other people's opinions because we don't want to be looked on in any negative way. We want to be part of the crowd. We want to be liked, you know. So we tend to sometimes not be true to ourselves with the black moon Lilith in Gemini. And, you know, Ophiuchus is all about authenticity. It's all about organic living. And, you know, the Ophiuchian energy doesn't really care whether people like them or not, because they kind of live under that kind of misunderstanding, that vibe of being misunderstood, that vibe of being, you know, looked upon in a negative way. So, you know, we still have this ongoing T-square going on with the nodes against Saturn, only now the goddess Pallas, Venus and Uranus have joined forces with the North Node. So there's a lot of pressure on Saturn at the moment, a lot of pressure to make shifts and changes. And, you know, Saturn does rule our organizations, our systems, our structures. And, you know, I've said before, Saturn to me was an architect in his own right, because he is the foundation builder. He can visualize structures, he can visualize what is needed to create a solid structure, you know. So, and systems, he's the organizer of the Zodiac, but he's more the mental organizer, the one that knows how to put things into place, but he wasn't the master builder. So I really do feel, you know, like Anubis was the master builder. They say it's Asclepius. I feel Asclepius is very much connected to Anubis. I'm not going to guarantee that though, because I just feel I need to do a bit more research on that. But, you know, when I look at the images on the stone tablets, they tell me a little bit of a different story, you know, compared to the traditional version out there. And, you know, as you all know, I will be writing a book about that. I have started it, but I'm up to my eyes in, you know, creating interpretations at the moment for the 13 star sign system and for my classes. So, you know, I'm still in developing, you know, I'm still in that place of developing the system. So what else do we have? Yeah, so, you know, there's a lot of recognition, a lot of awakening going on with this, a lot of shifts. And, you know, Mercury is going to be coming out of post-shadow soon. I mean, Mercury is part of this alignment. He's kind of come in separation now, though, because he's moving in direct mode now. I mean, his retrograde ended on the 3rd of June, but he's in post-shadow until the 18th of June. So his retrograde is still relevant, but for those of you that read my Mercury retrograde article, like I said, when he goes into post-shadow, he will get more clarity about all the confusion that he's been through throughout his retrograde. And when he leaves this post-shadow, he will definitely be leaving it in the know. So, you know, with Uranus and the goddess Pallas conjuncting the North Node, to me, that is like, wow, sudden awakenings. And, you know, it can create, you know, kind of uncomfortable. It can be kind of uncomfortable, you know. So Venus represents our finances and our joys in life. So I definitely feel this conjunction between the goddess Pallas and Venus is very, very conflicting. I mean, the goddess Pallas supports the air signs, so she's supporting the Uranian energy with these sudden shifts and changes that are occurring, with these sudden realizations, with these sudden reveals, especially with the North Node conjunct, which is all about our societies. So this is collective. This is a collective awakening, a collective recognition, a collective reveal. And with Venus here, kind of like in the center with the goddess Pallas. I mean, Venus rules Libra, which is all about justice and balance. I don't know. I just feel there's some things coming to light, and it's going to be kind of uncomfortable. And, you know, especially with our moon, you know, Ophiuchus, because remember, on the 4th of December in 2021, we had a solar eclipse occurring in the sign of Ophiuchus at 14 degrees. So with the supermoon occurring in Ophiuchus at 15 degrees, it's like it's a step up. And I really do feel this is the grand finale to that solar eclipse that happened on the 4th of December 2021. So our moon is also creating, you know, a T-square towards the goddess Juno and Neptune. So that's why I feel these two, you know, these squares I'm talking about is very relevant. And it does involve our sun and the MC, which is the midheaven, and the midheaven supports the 11th house, which is the public house. So here in the UK, with the Black Moon Lilith there in Gemini, it could be reveals about, you know, being unauthentic, but it could also be reveals about past mistakes. So is that anything else here? Yeah, we've got Mars in conjunction with Chiron. This is deep, you know, because Mars loses its power in Pisces because the Piscean waters are very deep. And again, 23 breaks down to 5. This is another shifting energy here. And yeah, I mean, with the moon in opposition to the Black Moon Lilith and Mars conjunct Chiron, there can be some emotional eruptions, some emotional outbursts, you know, emotional cries, you know. I just feel there's going to be something that's going to reveal itself, and it may not feel pleasant at the time, but it needs to come out. It needs to reveal itself, whatever it is. Now, this can be on an individual level. You know, it can affect us all in different ways, but because the nodes are involved, to me, it's a collective energy. It's more based on societies and communities. So again, like I said before in my last video, it can refer to locations around the world. And it could be, you know, in different areas of our lives or of our systems, since Saturn rules systems. Now here in the UK, Saturn retrogrades in the 6th house at the super full moon. So the 6th house is the house of Leo, actually, in the true lifetime sky, the house of the sun. So again, there is a light being shone in some form or way. The light is being shone into the darkest shadows. You know, this is a very bright house. This is the house of health. It's also the house of, you know, our work, how much work we're willing to put into things. So the 6th house still is that, you know, although it's not ruled by Virgo, it's ruled by the sun. So it's all about sun health. 6th house. The 7th house is the house of Virgo. And it's all about our relationships, not just intimate, but, you know, definitely potential marriage partners and friends and, you know, more kind of like our relationships on the whole, and what we're actually looking for in relationships. It's the 8th house that is the house of commitment, the house of marriage, ruled by Libra. So also the house of taxes and accounts, you know, that's more a Libran thing with the scales. So that's another thing I wanted to mention, actually, because, you know, with this super full moon taking place in Ophiuchus, this is a really good time for meditation, self-healing, you know, any kind of crafting or rituals. They'll be quite powerful right now. And, you know, Ophiuchus actually rules the 10th house. I mean, here in the UK, we've got Taurus on the cusp of the 10th house of Ophiuchus. And then we've got Ophiuchus on the cusp of the 3rd house of Taurus. So this is very opposing, you know. But fortunately, it goes into the 11th house of Sagittarius, the opposition. So the 11th house in the true lifetime sky is ruled by Sagittarius, but has Gemini on the cusp there and a little bit of Taurus. Right, I wonder, I'm sure there was more I wanted to say about this. Yeah, right. Oh, moon. I've spoken about this T-square here. Yeah. So that's it for the full moon. And yeah, I just wanted to say, like, the 8th house of Libra. Well, let's start from the 6th house, actually, of the sun. So this is growth. You know, if we're talking about harvesting, this is growth. This is creation, ruled by Cancer, where the seeds have already been planted. The 4th house is the womb, you know, ruled by Gemini. So this is like the gestation. And this is where I guess it's the sprouting begins. And this is the growth, the maturity. The 7th house of Virgo is the harvest, the house of the harvest. The 8th house is the house of like weighing up and separating the wheat from the chaff. The 9th house of Scorpio is about, you know, coming to terms with how much harvest is actually viable, and, you know, how much we may have to, you know, throw away, sort of thing, or what we're left with, basically. And then the 10th house of Ophiuchus is the house of giving thanks. You know, it's the storing house, the storage of the grain. And then the 11th house, the public house, is like putting it all out there, you know. So that's how the house system works when it comes to harvesting. Okay, so come out with that, actually. So on the 18th of June, Mercury comes out post shadows. Not too much I want to say about this, actually, except that we almost have a yod, and the black moon Lilith comes closer to the sun, but in Taurus. So we still have this grand alignment going on. But this yod, I mean, it's not quite a yod, because normally at the base of a yod we have a sextile. So normally with a yod, it's like we jump into opportunities, but we soon realise that it's leading to nothing, or it's not what we thought it was going to be. Excuse me. You know, the quincunx aspect between points shows there's nothing in common. We have nothing in common. So Pluto's in quincunx's sun. So Pluto's a very destructive energy. You know, Pluto is retrograding in Sagittarius. So this is also about exposure. I did recommend a few videos back that you go and read Eric Seligsohn's like Pluto in the Signs. And you can find that on my website, actually, under Eric Seligsohn's page. He's written a lot about Pluto in the Signs. And we're coming to the end of this now, because Pluto will be moving into Capricorn early next year. But, you know, since he's been transiting Sagittarius, he has been, you know, destroying or, you know, wiping out like our spiritual and moral systems, you know, truth, fire sign. Sagittarius is a fire sign. So we have seen a lot of fires, a lot of destruction calls through fires, a lot of destruction calls through, you know, firearms, and yeah, but it's kind of very interesting, Pluto transit in Sagittarius. To me, you know, we've seen the the fall of the churches in a way. You know, there's been a lot of exposure because Pluto is all about exposure as well. So there's been a lot of exposure going on in religious movements, in, you know, smaller organizations. You know, to me, Jupiter and Saturn, they're the planets you use in business astrology. So where Saturn is like the organizer, you know, Jupiter is more the marketing, is more on the marketing side of things. You know, like I said, Sagittarius does rule the 11th house, the public house. To me, he represents Horus in mythology. So he was the son of Osiris, and, you know, Sagittarius is actually the son of Ophiuchus. Okay, so yeah, we have the sun conjuncting the black moon Lilith. Not quite a very close conjunction, but still, you know, there is this kind of like more darker energy. It's like a little bit of depression out there. And we can't find common ground with the past. We can't find common ground with our previous spiritual values or the collective spiritual values that once was. You know, there is no common ground there. And I think, you know, it's become a very materialistic society. And, you know, another thing I wanted to say about the full moon in Ophiuchus, you know, we've been kind of slowly but surely over time being pushed into this one-size-fits-all society. And I think we're all becoming very cramped and suffocated now in this one-size-fits-all society that's actually getting, you know, it's shrinking more and more every day. And, you know, like they say with the bubble, bubble pops, but the bubble is in an expansion form. I mean, this is the opposite. This is like breaking free of like, you know, claustrophobia, breaking free of like, you know, being part of a mundane, everyday kind of system or routine that is just very stifling and suffocating. So I feel like there's so many of us out there that are unique individuals. We're in our own self-power. We understand our own individuality and our own uniqueness. And I feel like many of us are feeling very suffocated by that right now. And yeah, so I feel this energy of wanting to break free. And that's been kind of brewing for a few years now. You know, we've been through a lot as a collective. You know, there's been a lot of lockdowns and isolation and, you know, intimidation and division. And I really do feel that there's this urge to break free now and get on with our lives. I think, you know, the panic is over, but there's certain people that don't want to let that go. And yeah, I think, you know, as we come out of this post shadow, Mercury would have reached back to 11 degrees, which he started his pre-shadow, or he started his retrograde at, apologies. Yeah, you know, and 11 is all about self-mastery. And, you know, so we are, many are coming out of this retrograde phase in the know. And this Aryan energy, wow, this is major, especially with this T-square against Saturn. And Saturn's going to be coming into conjunction, or the moon would have already gone over Saturn. So the moon goes over Saturn. And when she comes into conjunction with the goddess Vesta, I feel that's when Vesta will get her spark back. I mean, at the moment, she's going through spiritual evaluations. Look at that, 744. It's a very spiritual number. And 2, in Aquarius, humanitarian values. And it's not just about the self, you know. So, yeah, this post shadow that we're coming out of, I feel is going to be clearing the way. You know, at the super full moon, I feel like there's going to be a lot of pressure, a lot of reveals. I think it's going to be quite a shocking time, but it can create a bit of depression for some people out there, or things may feel a little bit dark. But for those of us in the know, we know that, you know, once you hit rock bottom, you can't go down any further. The only way is up. So that's for the full moon and the Mercury post-shadow ends cycle. So we're going to be moving on to the solstice, actually, and Neptune retrograde. So just bear with me. So the June solstice is on the 21st of June. And here in the UK, the solstice actually reaches its peak at 10:05. So in the UTC time zone, it will be 9:05. So the sun rises at 36 degrees Taurus. Now I know a lot of you 13 star sign Geminis out there will say, no, the sun moves into Gemini on the 20th. But actually, if you was born before the year 2000, the sun would have rose in Gemini on the 21st of June or on the 20th of June. But after the year 2000, the sun continued to rise in Taurus for 1 extra day. So remember, on the bigger wheel, which is the procession, you know, the sun kind of moves backwards. So, you know, the sun moves backwards 1 degree every 71.6 years. So after the year 2000, the sun was rising in Taurus. Before the year 2000, the sun was actually rising in Gemini on the 21st of June. So that's just to clarify that. And yeah, so as the sun rises, he will be in square to the moon and Neptune. What's this one here? Yeah, to the moon and Neptune. So this can be kind of like a complex aspect because you know, this can create superiority issues. You know, they call it the Jesus complex. I call it superiority issues, where we feel that we're more than what we are, or we feel our capabilities are more than what they are. We can actually be quite self-deceptive. And, you know, it's very ego-driven though. And, you know, with the sun being in Taurus. Now, also what I wanted to show you, let me just bring this down, is astronomically, the sun will be in the hand of Orion. Now, a lot of people feel Orion is Osiris. I really don't see that. I don't see that. You know, Orion is very much associated with the constellation of Taurus. And to me, Taurus was a very materialistic energy, representing basically the golden age. And, you know, Taurus, out of all the zodiac signs, Taurus is an energy that's the hardest to convince when it comes to spiritual stuff, you know, when it comes to psychic intuition, you know. With Taurus, it's like they only believe what they see. So, you know, we can see Orion here. I mean, the sun is always in the palm of his hand, probably every solstice. And, you know, but he's not actually looking at the sun. He's just holding it. Looks like actually he's about to throw it. You know, now Orion is actually, he sits at the silver gates of man, and he's completely opposite Ophiuchus, who sits at the golden gates of the gods. So the sun is very much associated with the Ophiuchian energy, you know, even though it's Leonian in nature and it rules the Leo constellation. Remember, Ophiuchus actually governs all the star signs and, you know, kind of has control over all the planets. And, you know, the sun is golden, so the sun is masculine. Ophiuchus is actually a masculine, but within his masculinity, he holds a lot of feminine energy. So his mother, Aquarius, Isis, Virgo, and Nephis, the black moon Lilith. So we have three very divine feminine energies all under the house of Ophiuchus, you know, working under the house of Ophiuchus. So, you know, that's why Ophiuchus is considered the temple. It's the inner temple of the masculine and feminine energies. And it's all about our genetic coding and stuff like that. So I've still got videos to do on that. I'm actually putting together a presentation at the moment, and it's a presentation regarding, you know, what makes a constellation a star sign. And I'll be releasing that very soon, because I do go into the ecliptic and how, you know, we define that the age we are living in. So many people think we're in the age of Aquarius right now. We're not. Our sun still rises 8 degrees on the March equinox. So therefore we're still in the age of Pisces, but we're also in the aura of Aquarius. And we've only just, you know, probably since the year 2000 come into the aura of Aquarius. And, you know, after 71.6 years have passed, we will be entering into the first layer of our aura, because right now we're in the crystalline layer, which is the outer layer, the antenna. It's the 8th layer, which is the antenna. So we will actually be moving into the aura. I haven't worked out the dates yet, but, you know, the first aura, the first colour will be red. So it's the 7 rays. We'll be moving through the 7 rays on the countdown to Aquarius. I've said it many times, but just for those of you that haven't heard that, I just feel to say it again. So right now we're picking up psychically on the Aquarian energy. That's why a lot of people do believe we're actually in the age of Aquarius. But if we was, we wouldn't be in the world we're living in right now. It will be a completely different world by the time we reach the age of Aquarius. So Orion, yes. So to me, Orion is more ego driven. I do believe he's more the shadow side of the Ophiuchian energy. And he does sit at the silver gate of man. Silver is very much ruled by the moon, or silver is the colour, more the moon, or Mercury actually. It's more Mercury, more communicative, more, you know, because he's in armour and he's on the defensive. To me, it shows, you know, that Orion is more in his egocentric energy. whereas Ophiuchus is in more his like healing energy. And in mythology, Ophiuchus did actually try and heal Orion, or he did heal Orion. I don't know, I've got to research that a bit more, because like I said, when I research these mythologies, they don't always make sense to me. But then I do kind of get the message, and I do manage to read in between the lines. So, you know, with the chart wheel I just showed you, that would make sense to me. Why we're seeing this kind of like superiority. Can't get my words out today, sorry. I'm a little bit tired. There's been parties around here all weekend, which have been great because I love seeing people enjoy themselves, but definitely I've had a lack of sleep. But, you know, good music though, I've got to say. So, but we also have a kite. And, you know, the Black Moon Lilith has now come even closer to the sun. You know, there's actually 1 degree between them. So again, issues around authenticity, issues around honest self-truth, issues around it. This is more like putting on a show or putting on, you know, not agreeing so much as more Libran, but Gemini Libra can be very similar in that respect of like, you know, not wanting to upset the apple cart, so to speak. But that's more Libra, not wanting to upset the apple cart. With the Gemini energy under this kind of pressure, it's more about having to have approval, not wanting to be looked upon in any negative way, you know, so going along with the crowd, so to speak. And, you know, at the top of the kite, we did have the goddess Pallas and Venus at the full moon. But now, well, there wasn't a kite at the full moon, but I think at the Mercury post-shadow ends there was. But now we have the North Node and Uranus. So by the time the solstice hits, so Mercury comes out of retrograde on the 18th. A lot of people are coming out of that in the know. And there's going to be further revelations on the 21st of June that are coming out. And 22, the North Nodes will be at 22 degrees. So remember, 11 degrees was mastery of the self. 22 degrees, wow, that's like overcoming self-limitation to reach the heights of higher consciousness. So this is now mastering, working with others, tapping into that universal oneness, that universal consciousness, you know. And we have Neptune in sextile on one side, or Juno, Neptune, I think that is. And we have the goddess Ceres on the other. Actually, let me just check that out, because it's hard to see the aspects. So sometimes I have to jot notes down because I don't always remember. So on the kite, oh right, so it's not, it's actually the goddess Juno. Yeah, the goddess Juno. I think Neptune as well, because it seems to be a double-sided kite this way. Yeah. So Neptune and the goddess Juno are in sextile to the North Node and Uranus. But is Neptune still in square? No, Neptune will come back into square with the moon, who will be in Taurus at this time. So, you know, we're coming out of that superiority complex, you know, that I know it all kind of vibe. And we're going back into this strong psychic energy. Now we have the North Node at 22 degrees, which is overcoming self-limitations to reach a higher consciousness. And Uranus is all about a higher consciousness. And then we have the moon at 33 degrees in Taurus. So, wow, this is Taurus coming into self-mastery when it comes to his emotions and his sense of security. 33 degrees is definitely another master number. And that's about mastering knowledge. It's a mastery of knowledge of the whole. So, yeah, I just feel this solstice is going to be pretty unique. Oh, it's a Neptune retrograde. Apologies for that. Do you know what? Because I was thinking, I'm sure this goes on at the Neptune retrograde and not the solstice. So at the solstice, we may be a little bit too much in our ego. Apologies for that. Because I'm thinking, no, because I just spoke about Orion and ego. So I feel the solstice, there's a lot of ego clashing going on around about that time. And I think it's because all the reveals that are beginning to show themselves, I think there's still a lot of fight there. Are people fighting, like, don't want it to be true, or there's some kind of little uproar going on there. And but by the time Neptune goes into a retrograde, wow, I just feel things will calm down a hell of a lot by the 28th of June. And even though we've got this kite going on, the kite is all about highs and lows. But I just feel it's very promising. Since we go into rock bottom, we are coming into the South Node in Libra at the bottom. So this is coming into self-justice, and it's about the past, justice and fairness of the past at 13 degrees. 13 is an amazing rebirth cycle, in the physical world. If it was 10, I would say it was a rebirth cycle, like an ascension in a spiritual respect. But 13 to me is more the physical. So the 13th house here is the house of Aquarius, and the first house and the ascendant represents our time of birth. The only thing is here, it's like, the Black Moon Lilith is like trying to push us into being more authentic. She's sitting at 5 degrees in Gemini. This is shifting. So she's trying to shift us into a more humanitarian energy where we're unique and individualistic and not, we are part of the whole, but we all fit into that whole in separate pieces, in our own unique individual ways, with our own opinions and insights. That is what makes the world go round. Not this like hive mind consciousness, like where we all think the same. We're all bringing something different to the table, whether it's in our creativity or in our knowledge or in our productivity, physically. And, that has to be very much accepted, because we're all being squashed into this one size fits all, and it just doesn't fit all. And many don't want to fit into that. So, spiritually, we are one consciousness, but physically, we are all unique individuals, and we need to embrace that and come into our own self-power. And as most of you know, I've been saying that for several years now. It's not easy. It's not easy when you're used to following, the status quo. But there are shifts, there are changes, the world is changing. But we need to make sure that the changes are for the benefit of all and not just the few. So I'm going to leave it there, kindred. Sending you peace and much love. Take care.